Hey boys and girls, let's do some math. So today we're talking about rounding decimals. And let's remind ourselves of the rounding rules. So the rounding rules say that if the number is, that's not how I want to say it. Sorry, changed my mind. So think of the rhyme that we did at the beginning of the year. 5 or more, raise the score. 4 or less, let it rest. So what that means is if I am going to round 453, and I'm going to round it to the nearest tens place, I'm going to look at the 5, but I'm going to go next door to the 3. The 3 is going to tell me what to do. Because it is 4 or less, I'm going to let the 5 rest. The 3 becomes a 0, and the 4 remains the same. Now, if I'm going to round that same number to the nearest 100, I'm going to go next door to the 5. This time, 5 or more raise the score. The 4 is going to turn into a 5, and everything else becomes a 0. Hopefully, that is just a review from the beginning of the school year, and that you remember that from then. Okay, so now we're going to add the element of a decimal to it. Really not much different. So let's say my number is 4.53. Just go with the same numbers. Watch what's going to happen. If I'm told to round to the nearest whole number, here's my whole number. I'm going to do the same thing I just did. 5 or more raise the score. This becomes a 5. I keep my decimal, and these two numbers become a decimal, or 0. So my whole number is 5. 4.53 rounds to 5, excuse me. So again, that same number, 4.53. If I am asked to round to the nearest tenth, rounds to the nearest tenth. So here's my 10th place. I'm going to go next door to my hundredths place. That's going to tell me to keep my 5 the same, turn my 3 into a 0, keep my decimal and my 4 the same. So really, not any different from what we were doing before, except we just have different places we have to think about, and we have to make sure the decimal is where it needs to be. Okay, so if I bring up my teacher's manual, you're going to see that that is exactly what they are doing in some of these problems. The difference is they make their arrow go the other way. We point our arrow to the number we're using to round. Okay, but it's the exact same thing. The big thing to remember is if the digit is less than 5, we round down. In other words, we're keeping it the same. If the digit is 5 or more, then it goes up. Okay, so you do not have to write the 0. So when I did mine, I did 5.00. You don't have to. If it's asking you for a whole number, that whole number is just 5. Okay, so if I were going to round to the nearest 1 for the nearest whole number, so nearest 1, that is just your ones place. I'm going to use the tenths place to help me do that. So if it's 7.3, I'm going to go next door to the 3. 3 is less than 5, so my 7.3 rounds to 7. If I have 41 23, and I'm rounding to the nearest 1. I'm using the 1. I'm going next door to the 2. It's lower than 5, so my 41 is going to stay the same. These all become 0, so my answer is 41. If I have 6.27 and I'm asked to round to the nearest tenths, here's my tenths. So I have to go next door. I'm kind of getting rid of whatever is next to it. So I'm going to keep my 6 and my decimal. 7 is higher than 5, so it tells me to raise the score. So I'm going to raise the 2 to a 3, and my 6.27 rounds to 6.3. You don't have to put that 0 at the end, but you can. Actually, on this one, no, you wouldn't want to, because then it turns it into hundredths. And if you're asking to round to the nearest 10, you don't want that 0 there, actually. So you can leave that 0 alone, because now this is 6 3/10 instead of being 30 hundredths with the 0 there. So yeah, when you're rounding to the nearest tenth, you don't need that 0 at the end. When you're rounding to the nearest whole number, you don't need that 0 at the end either. Okay, so let's do another one. Let's do 31.37. Okay, so my 31 is going to stay the same because I'm rounding to the nearest tenths place. I'm going to go next door. 7 is higher than 5, so it rounds the 3 to a 4 because it's going to raise the score. And I don't have to put the 0, so it's 31.4. Okay, so other than the fact that you don't need that 0 at the end, this is pretty much like what we did at the beginning of the year with rounding whole numbers. If you have any questions, let me know. You can work on the attached worksheet. And that's a wrap for today. Have a great day, everyone.